We're now joined by Iran's former top diplomat and now a scholar in the field of international relations, Mr. Hossein Mousavian. Sir, thank you very much for meeting with us.
Thank you.
Let's start with the United States. It's now clear that Barack Obama is staying for a second term in office. Do you expect Iran still to attract as much attention, or will Mr. Obama focus on more pressing issues like dealing with the U.S. economy, for example?
Iran has been a top foreign policy issue for all U.S. administrations since 1979. And if not topic number one, definitely Iran has been always between top three foreign policy issues of the United States. That's why I believe even in the second term of President Obama, Iran would be, if not the most important, between top three important issues.
Well, now definitely President Obama is less constrained than before the elections. Do you think that could mean that he is more likely to get involved in something like a war with Iran?
I believe Obama came to office with engagement policy, and he himself was sincere and he had a good intention. He failed to deliver engagement with Iran due to pressures from Congress, AIPAC, Israeli Prime Minister, and very tough policies of Europeans. Because during President Bush, Europeans, they had engagement policy. But unfortunately, during engagement policy of President Obama, Europeans, they had hawkish policies. I agree with you, President Obama should have less constraint in the second term. And therefore, we can be a little bit more optimistic, not too much. We should not be too much optimistic, because the pressures would remain domestically and from Israel. But he would have a little bit freer hand for going forward with Iran. Hopefully he would be successful.
I'm glad you mentioned Israel, because the Israeli Prime Minister has been saying that the U.S. will assist Israel if it strikes Iran. What does this mean now after the election?
I believe Americans, they do not want to be engaged in third war in the Middle East. Americans, they have good lessons from invading Iraq and Afghanistan. They have lost trillions of dollars, thousands of lives, and they are leaving Afghanistan and Iraq in a mess, and they have no achievement. And stability has been much more worsened in Afghanistan and Iraq after American invasion. They understand the consequences of attacking Iran would be tenfold compared to Iraq and Afghanistan. Iran is compared to Iraq and Afghanistan. Iran is completely different. That's why I believe there is a consensus within Republicans and Democrats that they should not drag the U.S. to the third war.
Benjamin Netanyahu's own political future is currently uncertain, since his party is preparing to take part in the upcoming elections in Israel. How do you tell what's pre-election rhetoric and what are real intentions?
I believe even from the beginning, Netanyahu was bluffing. I believe he first put pressure on American president to make credible threat against Iran. What did they mean by credible threat? They wanted American president to put a red line, not on nuclear bomb, on enrichment, which is the legitimate rights of every member. When they could not push Obama to this point, he decided himself to make credible threat in order to push the US and the EU in a position to choose between crippling sanctions or war, which he was confident Europe and the United States would prefer crippling sanctions. But the main target of Netanyahu from the beginning was crippling sanctions, not war. And I believe he dismissed the US and Europe, and he was successful.
Is Israel's plausible nuclear stockpile a threat to Iran?
I really believe neither Israel is existential threat for Iran, nor Iran is existential threat to Israel. We had just Global Zero Summit conference here, and I told the conference that even today, Israelis, they are always using Iran issue, justifying the nuclear bomb, saying Iran is existential threat for Israel. But the fact is that Israel produced nuclear bomb before Islamic Revolution, when the Shah of Iran was the ally of Israel. Israeli nuclear bomb has nothing to do with Iran, because it was mastered, produced before revolution. Now they are using Islamic Revolution in order to justify, which I would not buy this argument.
Iran has really been stigmatized in the public domain for the past few years. What can Tehran do to persuade the West that it's not building a nuclear weapon?
I believe Iran has been ready for cooperation with the IAEA to remove the ambiguities. During our time, you remember, in 2003 to 2005, we implemented additional protocol. We implemented subsidiary arrangement code 3.1. We even suspended the enrichment. We gave access to the IAEA beyond additional protocol. We opened the military sites to the IAEA. But the EU3 was not able to recognize the legitimate rights of Iran because the US position was zero enrichment. That's why negotiations during our time failed, despite the fact we were ready for full transparency, and we proved practically. During President Ahmadinejad, Russia in 2011 proposed a step-by-step plan. The Russian step-by-step plan consisted of all major requirements of the IAEA, Atomic Energy Agency, and United Nations Security Council resolutions, and even beyond. But Iranian officials, they welcomed the Russian initiative as a base for negotiations. It was the US and the Europe which declined the Russian proposal. Therefore, I believe, again, even today, the Russian proposal can be a good base for negotiations.
You personally worked with IAEA monitors in Iran for several years, and, well, the international observers are known to have accused Iran of not letting them see everything they want, while Tehran has been saying that it can't satisfy all of their demands. Who is right?
It depends. Iran is a member of Safeguard. They are asking Iran to implement additional protocol. Implementing additional protocol is not mandatory for the nations, for the countries. Today, 70 countries, they do not implement additional protocol. Therefore, this would be a gesture, a goodwill from Iran to implement additional protocol. The IAEA is even requesting Iran to give access to the IAEA beyond additional protocol. No nation in this world has given access to the IAEA beyond additional protocol. I believe Iran is ready if they recognize the rights of Iran for enrichment like any other member of NPT, and if they are prepared ultimately to lift the sanctions, to start lifting the sanctions gradually, at the end state to lift all sanctions. If the West and the P5+1 are ready on these two issues, I believe Iran would show goodwill to accept additional protocol, to cooperate with the IAEA on possible military dimension issues, which would need to give access to the IAEA beyond additional protocol.
The EU hasn't been buying Iranian oil for months now. Has Iran been able to find new markets?
I believe Iranian oil export has decreased 50%, 60%. But believe me, even if Iranians, they cannot export one drop of oil, they would not give up their rights under NPT. It really doesn't matter how much Iran can export or not. During the war, 8 years invasion of Iraq, 1980 to 1988, we had much more worse situation.
Let's move on to Syria now. How do you think the conflict in Syria may affect the situation around Iran?
I believe this would affect more the region, the US allies. I believe if they continue like this, Syria would go to civil war and sectarian war, spreading to Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Lebanon, and even Turkey. Iran would be the least to be affected by the spread of civilian war or sectarian war from Syria. Of course, Iran may lose one friend, one partner like Bashar Assad, but it doesn't mean the radical Muslims, they would come to power, they would be friends of Israel or America. Muslim Brotherhood, if they are in power, they would be much more ideologists, and their base would be Islamic ideology. Assad is secular. That's the difference.
What is the biggest threat for the United States in the region?
I believe that the biggest threat for the US is coming out of Arab Spring, where Salafism, Talibanism, Al-Qaeda, extreme Sunni radicals are capturing the Muslim countries. The collapse of US allies like Mubarak, bin Ali, one after one. This is the real threat to the US.
How do you see the situation developing with the Arab Spring? Is it going to spread to other countries?
Nobody knows, but as far as I can see, the Islamists are coming to power through whole Middle East. And this would affect the remaining US allies in the region.
Mr. Mousavian, thank you very much for your time. This was Iran's former top diplomat and now scholar in the field of international relations, Mr. Hossein Mousavian.